If you visit Vietnam for the first time, you might notice something unusual. Coffee shops are everywhere, on busy street corners, inside quiet alleyways, beside local markets, along peaceful rivers, under old trees that have stood for decades. Some are modern and stylish. Others are nothing more than a few plastic chairs placed on the sidewalk. Yet, every one of them has something in common. People don't come here just to drink coffee. They come to slow down, to think, to work, to meet friends, to watch the world pass by, or sometimes just to enjoy being alone without ever feeling lonely. As someone who has lived alone in Ho Chi Minh City for years, I've discovered that Vietnamese coffee shops have quietly become my second home. They're where I begin many mornings, clear my mind after difficult days, and find comfort in the simple rhythm of everyday life. If you want to understand Vietnam, don't start with famous tourist attractions. Start with a cup of coffee. Every morning, after a walk through the neighborhood or a visit to the local market, I often stop at the same small coffee shop, just a few streets away from my apartment. It's nothing luxurious. There are no expensive decorations or fancy furniture. Just a few wooden tables, old ceiling fans turning slowly above, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed Vietnamese coffee filling the air. The owner has greeted customers here for more than 15 years. The moment I park my motorbike, he smiles and says, the usual. I nod. He already knows my order. One iced Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk. No need to ask. That simple routine may seem ordinary, but over time it creates something much more valuable than convenience. It creates familiarity. When you live alone, small moments like these matter more than you realize. One of the things I love most about Vietnamese coffee culture is that everyone is welcome. On any given morning, you might see an office worker reviewing today's schedule before work, a university student quietly studying for an exam, a delivery driver enjoying a quick break between orders, retired men discussing football and politics, young entrepreneurs working on laptops, an elderly couple sharing a single cup of coffee while watching people walk by. Everyone comes from different backgrounds, yet inside the coffee shop, those differences disappear. No one is in a hurry. No one is trying to impress anyone. For a little while, everyone simply shares the same peaceful space. When people think about coffee, they usually think about taste. But for me, the atmosphere is just as important. Close your eyes for a moment. You hear the gentle clinking of ice cubes inside tall glasses. The slow drip of Vietnamese coffee filtering through a traditional metal fin. Motorbikes passing outside. Birds singing from nearby trees. Someone laughing loudly with old friends. The familiar voice of the coffee shop owner greeting another regular customer. None of these sounds are extraordinary. Together, they create the soundtrack of daily life. It's it's impossible to recreate this feeling inside a shopping mall or a chain restaurant. It belongs only to Vietnam. One of my favorite things to do is simply sit near the entrance and observe the street. Without realizing it, the coffee shop becomes the perfect window into everyday Vietnamese life. Children wearing colorful school uniforms hold their parents' hands while waiting to cross the street. Street vendors push bicycles loaded with tropical fruits. Construction workers stop for breakfast before heading to new building sites. Delivery riders check their phones before rushing toward the next customer. An elderly woman carefully waters the flowers growing outside her small house. Life moves continuously, yet from my chair, everything feels peaceful. I've learned that sometimes the best way to experience a city isn't by rushing through it. It's by sitting still and allowing life to pass naturally in front of you. People often ask me why I don't simply make coffee at home. The truth is, I sometimes do, but making coffee and drinking coffee are two completely different experiences. At home, coffee wakes me up. At a neighborhood cafe, coffee reconnects me with the world. It's not really about caffeine. It's about beginning the day with intention. That small journey from home to the coffee shop reminds me to slow down before work begins. Even 10 or 15 quiet minutes can completely change my mood for the rest of the day. Modern life has made everything faster. Food arrives through apps. Groceries arrive through apps. Even coffee can be delivered to your door. But something important disappears when every interaction happens through a screen. One rainy morning, while waiting for the rain to stop, I started talking with an elderly man sitting beside me. He had visited the same coffee shop almost every morning since retiring. We spoke about life, work, family, and the city. Before leaving, he smiled and said, "Young people think happiness comes from having more. When you get older, you realize happiness comes from needing less." I never saw him again, but I still remember that conversation years later. Sometimes wisdom arrives unexpectedly, over a simple cup of coffee. Living alone means I spend many hours working by myself. Some days, staying inside the apartment becomes mentally exhausting. That's when I bring my laptop to a local coffee shop. Surprisingly, I become more productive. Not because it's quieter. In fact, Vietnamese coffee shops are rarely silent. The background conversations, the sounds of cups being placed on tables, and the movement of people somehow create a comforting energy. You're alone. But you're never isolated. Psychologists sometimes call this the comfort of shared space. You're surrounded by people, yet no one demands your attention. It's the perfect balance between solitude and connection. There's something special about neighborhood cafes. The owners remember people, not because they have customer databases, but because they genuinely care. They know which customer prefers less sugar, who drinks black coffee, who always arrives after dropping their children at school, who hasn't visited for several days because they were traveling. These small details create trust. One morning, after I had been sick for a week, the owner looked at me and immediately said, "You look much better today." That sentence reminded me that even when living alone, someone had noticed my absence. That feeling cannot be purchased. Vietnamese coffee is famous around the world, but what makes it truly unique isn't only the beans. It's the way people enjoy it. Nobody rushes. The coffee slowly drips through a small metal filter. People patiently wait. Nobody complains that it's taking too long. In a society that often celebrates speed, Vietnamese coffee quietly teaches patience. Perhaps that's why the experience feels so relaxing. Good things are worth waiting for. Over the years, I've realized that coffee shops have taught me lessons far beyond coffee itself. I've learned to appreciate silence, to observe rather than constantly speak, to notice people without judging them, to enjoy my own company, to slow down in a world that never stops moving. Living alone once made me believe I needed to fill every empty moment. Now I understand that empty moments are often where peace begins. If you ever visit Vietnam, skip one morning at the hotel breakfast buffet. Instead, find a neighborhood coffee shop. Sit outside if possible. Order a traditional Vietnamese iced coffee or a hot black coffee served with a metal filter. Leave your phone in your pocket. Watch people. Listen carefully. Notice how locals greet each other. Watch the rhythm of everyday life. You may discover that the most memorable part of your trip isn't a famous landmark. It might simply be one quiet morning spent drinking coffee among strangers. Living alone has taught me that home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a feeling. For me, that feeling often begins with a small wooden chair, a glass of strong Vietnamese coffee, and the familiar sounds of another ordinary morning in Ho Chi Minh City. These cafes are more than businesses. They are meeting places, workspaces, storytelling corners, neighborhood living rooms, quiet sanctuaries in the middle of a busy city. Every cup of coffee carries more than flavor. It carries routine, friendship, comfort, and the simple reminder that even in a city of millions, it's still possible to feel connected. So the next time you visit Vietnam, don't rush from one tourist attraction to another. Find a small coffee shop tucked inside a neighborhood. Order a coffee. Sit down. Take a slow sip. Then look around. You may realize that you've found something far more valuable than a good cup of coffee. You've found a place that feels like home, even if it's only for a single morning.